You know the situation. It's 2 a.m. and you're lying in bed staring at the ceiling. You're having that argument in your head again. The one where you finally say exactly the right thing. The one where they have to admit that they were wrong. And the one that ends with your reputation fully intact and everyone knowing the truth. Except it is 2 a.m. and none of that is actually happening. You're just lying there, running the tape on loop, furious and exhausted and completely unable to stop worrying about the why your credibility is taking a hitting. That's a very normal response to being attacked. That's your brain doing exactly what it was built to do. And today we're going to talk about why. Welcome to Unshakable Her, the podcast helping women in leadership build the influence, visibility and presence to make promotion inevitable. I'm your host, Caroline Esterson. Let's get started. Today, this is where we're heading. 1, you're going to understand exactly why your brain reacts to a reputational attack the same way it reacts to physical danger. 2, you'll understand why you can't stop replaying it. And 3, you'll have a way to start closing the loop internally, even when the external situation is still completely unresolved. On Monday, we talked about me and Ruth, 2 very different women, 2 very different triggers with one identical attack pattern. And patterns have explanations. So let's get into the science. The science bit, because facts beat fear every time. Let's start this at the beginning by reminding you about the threat response. When someone attacks your reputation, your brain doesn't distinguish between that and physical danger. Your amygdala fires, cortisol floods your system, and your prefrontal cortex, that part of your brain responsible for rational thinking, considered decision-making and strategic response, well, that goes partially offline. This isn't a metaphor. This is a measurable neurological response, which means the instinct to fire back immediately, to defend yourself loudly and publicly right now, is not actually a sign of poor judgment. It's your biology. It's your brain trying to protect you. It just hasn't caught up with the fact that the threat is reputational rather than, say, a saber-toothed tiger roaring at you. The first and most important thing you can do when someone attacks your credibility is not respond, because your brain is not yet in the state to say anything well. This is why John McLeod, who has spent decades advising leaders through exactly these situations, talks about the reflective pause as one of the most powerful tools available to you. This pause is essential as it allows your prefrontal cortex to get back online before you open your mouth. Now let's turn our attention to what social pain actually is. When you face a reputational threat, you feel isolated. People aren't sure how to be around you, and that can lead to changes in relationships. Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA has spent years studying what happens in the brain during social rejection. And what her research shows is striking. The same neural regions that activate when you experience physical pain also activate when you experience social rejection, exclusion, or reputational threats. Being falsely accused genuinely hurts. Neurologically, your brain is processing it as injury, which means the people who tell you to toughen up, to not take it personally or just rise above it, are essentially asking you to walk off a broken leg. The pain is real. The impact on your well-being is real, and pretending otherwise doesn't make you more resilient. It just means you're carrying an injury that nobody can see. This is the leadership lesson that most organizations completely miss. When someone is being insinuated against, briefed against, or publicly misrepresented, the organisation tends to focus on the reputational risk. It rarely focuses on the person in the middle of it, whose nervous system is in genuine distress. That's not a soft issue. It's a performance issue, a retention issue, and frankly, a basic decency issue. And lastly, I want to share something new with you. Bluma Zieganik was a Soviet psychologist who noticed something fascinating in the 1920s. Waiters could remember every detail of an order they'd not yet delivered. But the moment the order was complete, they forgot it almost instantly. Her research showed that the brain holds open loops in active memory, returning to them again and again until they're resolved. An unresolved threat or false accusation you can't yet address, a situation with no clear ending, it's an open loop, and your brain will keep pulling you back to it at 2 a.m, in the shower, in the middle of an unrelated meeting, until it's closed. You're not obsessing, your brain is doing its job. The problem is that some loops can't be closed externally right now, which means the leadership skill is learning to close them internally. And this is where the work gets practical, because you can't always resolve the external situation on your timeline. The investigation takes as long as it takes. The process is what it is. You can't force the ending, but you can give your brain something that functions like resolution, even while the situation is still live. And we're going to talk about exactly how to do that in the Quickfire Moves on Friday. Not the club, just bad processes. The system's the problem, not you. Let's fix it for you and the next one in. So now I want to take a moment here because this is important. Everything we've just talked about, the threat response, the social pain, the open loop replay, these aren't signs that you could not cut out for leadership. They're signs that you're human. Now, can organisations do more to create the kind of culture where leaders are prepared for this? Absolutely, and the best ones already are. But that's probably a longer conversation. Right now, I want to make sure you have what you need. As an aside, have you seen the new Netflix series, Pulse? It's a medical drama set in a busy ER in Miami. And underneath all the adrenaline and the emergency medicine, there's a quieter story running through it. There's a formal complaint between the chief resident and his number 2. And what is fascinating, if you're watching it through a leadership lens, it's not the complaint itself. It's what happens to everyone around them. People start to pick sides or they go quiet. And both of those responses feel like abandonment to the person at the centre of it, even when the silence comes from a good place. Because here's what I've observed in organisations. The people who care most about the person under attack often go the quietest, not because they don't believe in them or that they've stopped caring, but because they don't know what they're allowed to do. They're afraid of jeopardising the process, afraid of being seen to take sides or saying the wrong thing. So instead, they do nothing. And the person in the middle of it, who already feels isolated and exposed and is replaying everything at 2 a.m, now also feels invisible to the people she thought had her back. That silence isn't malicious, but it does feel like abandonment. And we need to talk about what good leaders actually do instead in this situation. So if you're watching a colleague go through something like this right now, here's what I want you to know. You can't fix it, particularly if there is a formal process in place, but there is a significant gap between fixing it and doing nothing. And that gap is where your leadership actually lives. One thing that you can do is check in on them privately and consistently, not just once, regularly. On an ordinary Tuesday, a message that says, I'm thinking of you. You're not asking for an update. You don't need anything back. You're just showing up for them. Don't require them to pretend they're okay. This is a big one because when we ask someone how they are and they say fine, we might tend to accept it because it's easier for us. But the person in the middle of a reputational attack is rarely fine. They're just protecting you from the weight of it. You don't need to push, but you can say, no, this is hard. You don't have to pretend otherwise with me. And mean it. You don't need to have a view on the rights and wrongs of the situation to say somebody, I can see this is taking a toll, and I want you to know that I see you. It's not taking sides, it's just being kind and considerate. So keep showing up even when they stop asking you to. People who are rock bottom often stop reaching out, not because they don't need the connection, but because they're exhausted and they don't want to be a burden. So please don't wait to be asked. Just keep showing up for them. And holding the line is actually the right strategy when a formal process is underway. I understand that completely. But holding the line and actively supporting the person in the middle of it aren't in conflict. Both things are necessary. And the leaders who understand that are the ones that people remember long after the process is finished. Now, what if there isn't a formal process? What if it is just malicious gossip with nowhere to go? In some ways, that's harder because at least a formal process has structure. It has an end point. It has someone whose job it is to investigate. Malicious gossip is often kind of ambient noise. It circulates and mutates. And because there's nothing formal to point to, the person on the receiving end can start to feel like they're imagining it or overreacting or somehow responsible for it. But they're not. And the leader response here is different. Because with a formal process, your job is to support the person without touching the process. With malicious gossip, you have more room to act and more responsibility to use it. So what might this look like in the real world? Well, here's the thing about malicious gossip. It rarely announces itself. It doesn't always look like a rumour being passed around or someone saying something outright unkind. Sometimes it's an eye roll when somebody speaks in a meeting. It's barely visible. Sometimes it's a smooth interruption when someone starts talking over you mid-sentence as though you've finished and nobody in the room says a word. Sometimes it's credit drift where you make a point that lands nowhere and 10 minutes later a colleague makes the same point and the room responds. And sometimes it's being described as emotional when you're passionate, aggressive when you're direct, difficult when you disagree, or not a team player when you hold a boundary. Sometimes even it's the slow fade when you used to be copied in on things and then quietly, without announcements, this just stops. None of these are easy to name in the moment, but the cumulative effect of all of them is a reputation quietly being shaped without your knowledge or consent. And that isn't gossip in the dramatic sense. It's a campaign, and it deserves to be named as one. So what should you do? Firstly, name it out loud when you hear it. When you hear something being said about a colleague that's unsubstantiated or designed to damage, you are allowed to say, that doesn't match my experience of her. Or simply, I'm not sure that's a fair characterisation. You just need to not be silent because silence in the face of gossip reads as agreement. Then interrupt the circulation. Gossip spreads because each person passes it on. A leader who says, I'm not going to engage in this and changes the subject is actively shrinking the fire. You don't need to confront the source. You just need to stop being part of the chain. And then, this is biggie, be visibly warm towards the person being targeted. This is underestimated. When gossip is circulating, people start to unconsciously distance themselves because association feels a little bit risky. A leader who is visibly and publicly warm towards that person, who includes them, references their work positively, or asks for their opinion in meetings, is actively counteracting the narrative. And of course, tell the person what you're hearing. This is the uncomfortable one, but someone being gossiped about often doesn't know the full shape of what is being said. Telling them carefully and privately gives them the information they need to make decisions. It helps them understand the landscape, and together you can start working out how to stop it. And of course, as a leader, go to the source if you have the standing to do so. If you know where the gossip is coming from and you have enough seniority or relationship to address it directly, do it clearly. Say, what you're doing is damaging. Let them know that you've noticed. Well, that conversation is uncomfortable, yeah, but it's also often the only thing that stops it. The underlying principle across both scenarios is the same. In a formal process, your job is to protect the person. In a gossip situation, your job is to protect the person and actively disrupt the pattern. You've got more tools available, so use them. And here's the thing that connects both. Whether it's a formal complaint or corridor whisper, the person in the middle of it needs to know that the people who know the truth aren't just holding it privately, that they're doing something with it. Even if that something is small, even if it's just showing up on an ordinary Tuesday and saying, I see you and I've not gone anywhere. That is leadership, the consistent, quiet, unglamorous showing up week after week until it's over. Now, I'm aware that everything I've just said is about what you do for someone else, and some of you listening right now might be the person in the middle of it. You're not watching a colleague go through this. You are the one that's staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. So I want to give you one thing to hold on to until Friday. Your brain is keeping the loop open because it believes the situation is unresolved. And it's right. But here's what it doesn't know yet. Resolution doesn't have to come from the outside. You can give your brain a signal that you're handling it, even when you can't fix it yet. Write it down, not the feelings, the facts, what you know to be true, what you've done, what the next step is, even if the step is simply waiting. That's not journaling, that's closing a loop. It won't fix everything, but it'll give your brain something to rest on tonight. We go much deeper on this on Friday, but that'll do for now. But before Friday, I want to leave you with 3 questions to ponder. First, when your reputational credibility has come under attack, what's your first instinct to do? Is it to defend immediately or go silent, maybe explain or retaliate? And with the benefit of what you now know about your threat response, was that instinct serving you or your amygdala? Second, think about someone in your world right now whose reputation is under pressure. Whether it's formal or just the eye rolls, have you named what you're seeing? Have you shown up for them? Or have you gone quiet because you didn't know what you were allowed to do? And third, what's the open loop that your brain keeps returning to at 2 a.m, yours or someone else's? And is there any part of that loop you could close today? Not by fixing the external situation, but by doing one small thing that signals to your own brain or to theirs that this isn't being left unattended. So as we wrap up, let's come back to the 3 things I promised you right at the start. Why does your brain react to a reputational attack the same way it reacts to physical danger? Because your amygdala doesn't read the label on the threat. It just fires. And your prefrontal cortex, that wise, strategic, measured part of you, temporarily goes offline. That's biology. Why can't you stop replaying it? Well, because the Zeigarnik effect means that your brain holds unresolved situations in active memory and keeps returning to them. You're running an open loop. That's fixable. Just write everything down. And how do you start closing the loop internally? Well, on Friday, we're going to get properly practical about that with 3 moves, clean and specific, including the song that I think captures this whole trilogy better than anything I could say. See you then. That's it for today. Before you go, if something in this episode made you think, that's why I do that, hit follow wherever you're listening, because that moment of recognition, that's where Unshakable starts. Remember, I'm in your corner. See you Friday.